Hello. Saturday the 27th of June should have been London Pride. As is customary, fans from many of the more than 50 football clubs in the UK with LGBTIQ supporter groups should have marched, campaigned, educated and socialised together at the event. Of course, Pride did not quite happen like that this year. Instead, to mark the occasion, online events spread across social media platforms and took place in the form of Global Pride and Sport Pride. Marking this important development, at the Football Collective, we wanted to host a fringe event, and so we called upon our friends at Football Supporters Europe to work with us and host a panel associated to the Out in Football project, which is funded by the European Commission. So, without ado, we have three special people on the panel today. We've got Andy from Football Supporters Europe and Football Fans Gegen Homophobia. We've got Stephanie Fuller from Pride in Football and Palace and Proud, and Max Baganda of AIK Solana. So we'll go and we'll ask each of the panelists, starting with Andy, to introduce themselves first of all and introduce some of the work that they undertake. So over to Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I'm Martin Endermann from Berlin, but everyone calls me Andy, so please do so as well. I actually have two hats on today. Well, not literally, as you can see. But I'm here in two roles. I work for Football Supporters Europe, which is Europe's football fans organization. We have a membership in more than 45 European countries. European countries for us are UEFA countries, so countries who take part in UEFA competitions. And we're basically the, if you want to say so, union of European football fans. We work on a lot of topics within European football, a lot on European Cup competitions, for example, a lot on what every football fan wants, cheaper prices, return of standing, that kind of proper football topics. But we also work on making football a more inclusive place, obviously, and the support of LGBT plus fan groups, fan clubs, obviously is therefore another important topic for us. And thankfully, we also got a lot of the existing LGBT plus supporters groups within Europe, within our membership. My second head is that I'm one of the founders of the German initiative Football Fans Against Homophobia, which was founded nearly 10 years ago, which is a network of fan clubs, fan groups, individual fans from Germany who are allies in the battle against homophobia, coming out of the idea that fans were often only seen as a problem when it comes to homophobia and not a part of the solution. And basically, when we started the campaign nearly 10 years ago, we saw that there wasn't demand by non-LGBT plus persons to show support in the stadium, to challenge their fellow fans, to challenge their clubs, to challenge the associations to do more against homophobia in football. We started with simple stuff. We had a banner touring through stadiums all over Germany. With the logo, the campaign logo, and the famous photo of Scholes and Neville kissing after a goal, which has been shown in over 100 stadiums in Europe by different fan groups who were then, when they showed the banner, not only showing the banner in the stadiums, but also organizing action days at their clubs, organizing lectures, doing event days on the topic, stuff like this. So over the years, it really became a network of groups active on the topic. And since 7 years, Football Fans Against Homophobia Germany is also an official association. So you can become a member if you want to. Also, Football Fans Against Homophobia has several offsprings in other countries. So basically, we wanted to let everyone use our ideas, use our branding, if you say so. So there are no similar organizations in other countries. Gemeinsam gegen Homophobie in Switzerland, Football Fans Against Homophobia, Austria. There are also campaigns with the same name in Sweden and Norway. Also, other countries, fan groups in other countries have adopted the logo and used it in stadiums. There were fan groups in the United States of America, even in Israel, who used our branding to do actions against homophobia in their respective countries.
Thank you, Andy. And if we pass over to Stephanie next.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Fuller. I'm chair of, so a bit like Andy, I have two hats on. I'm chair of Pride in Football and also the founder of Proud and Palace, which is the LGBT supporters group for Crystal Palace Football Club. And that's probably why I'm involved with Pride in Football as a result. And perhaps if I talk more about Pride in Football, because I think it's got broader kind of context. Pride in Football is a network of all the LGBT fan groups that are aligned to professional football clubs here in the UK. And we have now around just over 50 groups as members. The sort of movement, if you like, started in 2013 when there was, I think, Norwich City were the first to kind of, actually no, it was Arsenal with their Gay Gooners, formed the Gay Gooners, then Norwich City and Manchester City and Spurs came along pretty much all at the same time. And then from that point onwards, it started to sort of gather momentum that, you know, it was good to have LGBT fan groups visible football grounds in England and amongst their respective fan bases. And Pride in Football has become a result of all of those things happening. So it's quite a grassroots organisation. You know, it's purely a grassroots organisation. It's come up through the fans. It hasn't been led by club initiatives. Clubs have more latterly come on board to see the value of working with the LGBT fan groups, but the drivers behind it, you know, when I talk about those 50 groups that are part of our network, they're from right across the UK and they're from right across the leagues. So it's not just the Premier League focused set of groups. You know, these represent 50 different football clubs from across the country, which I think is really powerful. Ambition wise, we know that that means that there's still a considerable number that don't have LGBT fan groups, but that's for us something that we can address, because obviously they will have LGBTQ plus fans, as every club does. You know, they've always been there, they just never had any visibility. And I think that's why we see why Pride in Football creating it was so important, because it gave an umbrella voice to those 50 groups, so that when we needed to say something as in unison, we were in a position to do that. And how we really approach this is to create an inclusive environment within football for all LGBTQ plus people to feel that football is a place that they can be, that they can go and support their team, that it's not an either or choice. And the first step towards doing that is visibility. So the fan groups provide that visibility on a local level. And then what we do is we use that opportunity to then educate our fan bases on a peer group level. So it isn't like the club talking down to fellow fans saying, you must do this, you cannot say that. But it comes on a peer-to-peer level, which in our experience tends to get much better buy-in. And you get more honest conversations with people, and it breaks down barriers more effectively. And from that platform, we're then able to advise the club on perhaps how clubs across the country might want to work with their fan groups, and think about the kind of messaging they're using and how they might want to actually show representations of the LGBTQ community within their own materials, so that people can see themselves there. Because as the saying goes, you know, if you can't see it, it's hard to be it. And actually creating those visibility pieces are really, really important. So, you know, I'm really proud to be chair of Pride in Football, the committee that I'm part of, and I'm just an equal part of it. You know, we've got some amazing people on that committee from all sorts of different clubs, and then the membership itself is really what makes Pride in Football so effective. And this last weekend, as Peter said, you know, should have been Pride in London, didn't happen. But what did happen, which hasn't happened before, and I could not have envisaged that this would have happened even 5 years ago, the Talk Sport, which is, you know, the biggest kind of football broadcast station really in the UK, approached us to partner with us for their content for the day, because they wanted to profile LGBTQ plus people within the world of football across their match day coverage from 11 a.m. on Saturday to 9 p.m. Saturday evening. And they did it. They had a number of different voices, some from our fan groups, some from people working in the broadcast media, some people that were sort of female players, and they actually did that. And I can assure you that would not have happened 5 years ago. I mean, that is a real sort of, I'm sure they're taking a lot of flack for it, but it was it's a big moment. So I think that, we're part of a broader movement. And what we also like to do is to celebrate the good things that have happened along the way as well. We were really pleased that we were able to put forward a nomination for Justin Fashanu to be inducted into the Football Hall of Fame, and for that to happen, which was long overdue, massively long overdue, but to see that happen is really important. So I think we create visibility, and it gives us a platform to educate, and ultimately along the way we want to celebrate that as well, and that's what Pride in Football is.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stephanie. I think the theme of visibility is one that we'll pick up again later down the line. But if we hand over to Max.
Yeah, thank you. I'm calling from Sweden in the rain, or as we say in Sweden, summer. I'm working in a big club in Sweden called AIK from Solna. And I'm ahead of all the work with the values and the CSR work in the community. And my main job is to make sure that these beautiful words that are on a piece of paper actually get lived by in the reality, that we're actually working on a daily basis to be an including club where everybody feels secure to be who they are, and that we as a club really take actions and be a big part of the social work of being an including society. So I'm really happy to be here representing a club and be a part of this and all these amazing people to talk and how we together can make a more including society. So yeah, that's pretty much me. And I guess if you have any questions, just ask me later on.
So Max, you were a professional player beforehand, weren't you?
Yeah, I've been playing on a professional level in Sweden, yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about those experiences and how that led you into your current role?
Of course. As you said, I played on a quite high level in Sweden. I really loved playing the sport, but I always had problems like being a part of it and be respected for who I am and be respected for what I stood for. And that actually led me to a point later on where I couldn't stand for what the football and the sports and the clubs actually were doing. So I got so tired of being like, have to fight to be who I am and to be able to watch people get bullied because they were different. So I actually quit playing football, even though I loved it, because I didn't want to be a part of it. And I actually took my name and everything that I achieved in football to be a part of making the changes that needed to be done and be a part of creating a more including environment, a place where people can be who they are and actually just playing the sport, just love the sport and not have to be like wearing a mask and pretend to be something that they are not. And that's pretty much why I ended up in this role and in the sport. So yeah, that's a short story. Otherwise I would be talking for like 2 hours now, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
I find your story to be absolutely fascinating. I mean, how did the fans react to you saying, no, I'm not standing for your discrimination anymore, I'm taking a stand and stepping away from football? Or how did the clubs react? Because the discrimination was also from the clubs, wasn't it, as well as the supporters?
Yeah, I didn't have that much from like the supporters, because on the level I play, we didn't have that like really pressure from the supporters, but the clubs obviously reacted because I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. And I, had all these lectures and writing books about it and writing pieces in the paper. So they reacted, and I was really, really nervous about the reaction. And I was also nervous about the reaction from the players, my teammates, and what would they think. But the thing is that like almost every reaction was positive. It was like finally someone said something. I mean, I got so many reactions from players that I've been playing with or in teams that I played against. It was like, oh, finally, I never liked this. I just want to be a part of this because I don't want to be left alone. The reaction was so positive that I really felt the strength to really keep pushing it forward. And I don't know if I was the first one to talk about this, but maybe I was one of them. But now we are quite a lot of people talking about it in Swedish football, about mental health and how we need to be thinking as clubs and be a part of society. So it's really a movement, and it's really nice to be a part of that. But the reactions were positive, because people don't want to be mean. People doesn't want to be a part of this. But we have to step out and say no.
Do you think it was really important that somebody stepped out and was visible and audible in this anti-discrimination voice, and that then gave rise to the movement?
Yeah, I think so. I think I had the respect because I've been playing on a quite high level, and I actually knew how it was in the locker room, how we're supposed to behave, like following all these stereotypes of being a man and stuff like that. I think that I got the respect and the right, so to speak, to actually speak in this matter, because I know how it was from the inside. So yeah, I think that was a big thing. Yeah.
And Stephanie, there's some commonality, some common thread there with pride in football, isn't there? The idea of being visible and audible in this anti-discrimination voice to the other supporters, to the football clubs too.
Yeah, absolutely, there is, and it's it's interesting listening to what Max says, and it's made me reflect on some of my own experiences, because so one of the things I don't mention quite so much as well is that I used to work in football, and you know, I held a role as sort of commercial sales manager for a club, and if I'm honest, I loved the job, but I know why I left, and I knew that I couldn't transition in that job, in that environment, and that is the reason why I quit that career. It's the only reason I left. And actually, you know, I think over the years I sort of kidded myself there were other diversions, but there weren't. That was the reason, because I knew that this would not have ended well, not for me personally, and that I'd have been too isolated in that moment and during that period of time. It's quite a way back now, and it would have been incredibly difficult. And I just probably wasn't strong enough to kind of take all of that on my own at that time. So I think it's incredible that Max sort of was able to do that, and I have enormous respect for you for doing that. But in terms of sort of pride in football, your visibility is so important, because you know, one of the things that I recognized when I started Proud and Palace is that, and it's very topical now, but you know, in England you've had the kind of kick racism out of football campaign for many years, and I was always mindful of the fact that actually, you know, the most racist football fan does know when they're sat next to somebody that's black, because you can see that, and there's probably a degree of self-moderation that comes with that. It doesn't change their views, doesn't improve their thinking, but it does meter down probably their behavior to some extent. But you don't necessarily know whether you're sat next to somebody that's lesbian, gay, bi, trans, you know, you don't necessarily know that. And so as an LGBTQ person in a football ground, you can hear exactly what somebody uses as abuse without any filter, and they can be right next to you, and they will use your identity to abuse an opponent or a visiting fan. So the only way we could really conquer that as a collective was to give it an identity as fan groups in our own clubs. So sort of saying there is at Palace, for instance, my club, you know, we have got LGBTQ fans, and this is our banner, and this is our Twitter account, and this is the pub that we drink in, and these are the people that help the group move forward. And, you know, Proud and Palace is just indicative of all the other groups across the country. And that's how that visibility piece is so important, because the second it becomes visible, I don't know, I think it destigmatizes quite a lot of stuff for some people, actually, and they suddenly realize that they question their own behavior and probably recognize that now and again they've been pretty awful in your presence. And as Max says, people don't, by and large, my experience is people don't really want to be that person. They don't want to be awful people that go around abusing people. So when you give them the opportunity to stop and think, I think it makes a big difference. And one of the big things that we did was, you know, we'd been in the Premier League a couple of seasons, and our big rivals are Brighton and Hove Albion. And if you know anything about Brighton as a town, it has a strong identity as a place which has a large gay community, and historically a lot of the songs between sort of Palace and Brighton are homophobic, and we could see that this was coming. We were going to play them again, and we thought the best way to address this is not to go to the club, but actually we put a statement together on a sort of PDF, and then we went out to all the other Palace fan groups and said, this is our statement about, there's loads of good reasons to dislike Brighton, but homophobia isn't one of them. And, you know, we had 99 reasons to hate Brighton, but homophobia is not one of them. And, you know, and the word hate was a bit, some people are, oh, you shouldn't use that word. So you can only distill football down so much so quickly around this sort of tribalism. So, and I thought it was right to leave it in there, and we did, and we had something like 42 other Palace fan groups all put their logo on it and then retweet it the same day to say, look, this is just embarrassing that people are using homophobia to abuse our rivals. There's lots of other things that are rubbish about them, but this is just no longer acceptable. And I think that sort of spoke to the visibility piece. It kind of proved its value to us at that moment.
I see Max is wanting to come back in.
Yeah, I just want to like really say that, like Stephanie is talking about, nobody, but quite a few people wake up in the morning like, oh, today I'm going to be really homophobic and sexist. I don't think people do like that, but we really need to talk to them and make them understand that when you say stuff like that, it leads to this. You normalize say this. You really need to talk to people about it, because like they don't want to be that they don't want to be that person, but we really need to like teach them, make them think. So that's real good to you.
And so, Andy, do you think that the football fans against homophobia is part of that process of gentle education that both Max and Stephanie call for?
I would definitely think it is. I mean, when we started, there were already a couple of LGBTQ plus fan groups in existence in Germany. But as you can imagine, at least at some clubs, at the more problematic clubs, they were also be seen as okay. They are there, but they are still not real fans because their whole identity is being gay. Is that it? And that, at least in Germany, it was important that allies also step up. Also say, yeah, of course, they are part of the fan culture here at my club. They are a big part of the identity of the club. It's also very important, or it has been very important in the last couple of years, that the queer fan clubs here are a part of, for example, official fan dialogue structures with their respective clubs, even with the German Football Association. And I mean, fan dialogue not only on topics of discrimination and inclusion, but also on every other topic which has to do with football fans and what football fans actually want. And that obviously also leads to a bit of more, getting some fan groups into the thinking, okay, they actually, want exactly the same thing as we want in a football ground. Also, I think both things, the foundation of LGBT plus fan groups, as well as campaigns like ours, but also campaigns on a local level, let or force the clubs to be a bit more proactive. Because I mean, in the past, no one at club level, even association level, when I say past, I go back maybe 10 years, maybe a little bit less. No one really bothered about homophobic chants. It was sometimes there might have been a critical article or someone saying something on TV, but it wasn't discussed at all. While up to that point, racism, for example, was way more unacceptable than homophobia. And also the clubs learned a bit that they can't only focus on fighting racism, they also have to fight other forms of discrimination. And I think many clubs reacted on this. Many clubs are proactive now, or a bit more proactive. I mean, Max Club is one of the best examples where they have a person only responsible to push these values through all levels of the club. And that's also what we are trying to do within FSE through our Out in Football project, which is funded by Erasmus+, where we try to bring all these activists together, not only from a fan base level, but also from clubs, leagues, and associations, because I generally believe there are a lot of dedicated individuals at many, if not most, football clubs. It's just lacking here and there with the expertise, especially on this topic. And our aim, obviously, is to bring people together, some who have done something, who have the experience, but also to bring them together with the affected groups, who should always be the first to actually tell clubs how to deal with problems.
So Andy, the club in Berlin, Tevi, was quite important to the start of football fans against homophobia, wasn't it? Was it important that there was a fan base from which this started from?
I think it was. I'm a fan of Tennis Borussia, who most of their time played in the 5th and 6th league in the last 20 years. But historically, we are a big club with some sort of leftist fan base. I think what got many of our younger fans politicized was that we were actually, when we traveled away in the last 20 years, abused with racist abuse, but also homophobic abuse, as our club color is purple. And many people see purple as a whatever, gay color. So we actually experienced homophobic chants nearly at every game where we played, especially 20 years ago, when it was more of an, when you could do way more than you could do today at a German football ground. So actually many of the younger ones with us were led into a process of why are they singing this and why is this supposed to be a problem? I mean, even me, I grew up in the mid-90s in terms of growing up in a stadium. I went to an incredible amount of Karlsruhe games, which is my hometown team, and it was perfectly normal to shout homophobic abuse. I can't really remember, or maybe I don't want to remember if I engaged in this as well, but I wouldn't be surprised, as it was completely normal. I think the whole culture, at least at most of the clubs, changed, and I'm happy that our group was maybe at least a bit responsible for that within Germany.
Thank you. And it's, I suppose, there's a question that I've got to ask of all three of you here in terms of making the progress and gains with the associations and with the clubs will often depend upon you finding people within those associations and clubs who share the common values that you do. Is that something that you've found easy to do, or have there been challenges in locating those people? Andy?
I would just add to that. Obviously, we have a network not only with Work Against Homophobia, but also within FSE, where it's easier to identify dedicated people within the clubs, because it's mainly the clubs who would be dedicated on social issues, on issues of inclusion and anti-discrimination, would also most of the time be the ones who engage a bit more with their own fan base in general. So these clubs, our groups, our membership groups, would also have most of the time a good relationship with the responsible people. So it's actually easy to identify. But then again, it's also there are also other criteria. I mean, for some clubs, it's easy to engage on these kind of topics. It's easy in terms of their fan base. For example, in Brighton, for a club like Brighton and Hove Albion, it's probably not so difficult to do some actions against homophobia, because that's what the city is standing for. That's where quite a chunk of their own fan base would be in favor of. A club with a more problematic fan base, and I know that it's at least a couple of people here in the call might be part of a club with a more difficult fan base. It's way more important, and then it's also down to resources. I mean, a club who can afford to have, I don't know, 5 SLOs, an anti-discrimination manager, or whatever. For this club, it's way easier to engage in these kind of topics than a small second or third division club, which maybe has 5 people working full time for it at all. So I think there are a lot of criteria who have to come together that you find a club who is able to and has the expertise to get engaged on these matters.
Great, thank you. And Stephanie, you mentioned before about Talk Sport and the progress that was made in the media gaining media traction and gaining media visibility for LGBT fan groups. How did you go and develop those relationships with those media agencies, or did they come to you?
Well, I mean, it's not been an overnight thing. I think it's important to say that this has been kind of a build-up of a passage of time, really. But going back to your previous question as well, in terms of finding the right people at clubs, because I'd like to quickly say something on that too.
Yes, please.
You know, I think Andy made the point about resources, and I think that's really key, actually, because depending on the size of the club, its infrastructure will be scaled according to almost how successful it is. And, you know, so for instance, the Premier League clubs have all got fairly big staff teams, probably have somebody who sits there with the diversity or equalities brief within the structure of the organisation and actually is expected to deliver. So to some extent, you should be able to find that person relatively quickly and move forward a conversation. I think the lower you go down the leagues, the more difficult that becomes. And then you need to find the right kind of people that are really engaged, that are perhaps doing this because they feel that it's important, and you know they've got the right motives around it. And I think it does get more difficult then, and it's not a consistent experience. I can't say that all League One clubs will act this way and all Championship that, because it's just not true. There's quite a big inconsistency, and even within sort of Premier League level, you know, you do see some fluctuation. And interestingly, Andy mentioned Brighton. Well, you know, they initially said they didn't need an LGBT fan group because they don't have a problem. And, you know, but then actually their fans said, well, you know, actually we do have some problems with our own fans now and again. So we do need this. And, you know, they responded in the way that you'd expect them to, very effectively. Going back to the kind of media engagement piece, I think that's maybe part of that is to do with, I think it's several different things, but creating Pride in Football meant that we provided a route to access a vast range of organisations through one point. And that makes it easier for the media, because then they're actually like, okay, we can go to Pride in Football. They've got this network of all these different people. There's also the Fans for Diversity project, which is a coalition between the Football Supporters Association and Kick It Out. So again, there's another really effective piece of work being done there. And then you have you know, in England for quite a while now, we've had Football v Homophobia, which had already kind of raised the visibility before Rainbow Laces was a thing. You know, Football v Homophobia was already very active. So I think there's been a lot of noise at a low level around this for quite a while now. And then what we've been able to do is to actually engage media, and when they've needed quotes and need something to go to, we've made it easy for them to find us. And, you know, when we've gone to them when we don't think what they're saying is fair, you know, we don't think that the way they're presenting themselves is right, we will go and kind of call that out as well. So I think it's been, because we're a voluntary group, you know, there's nobody paid in Pride in Football. We'll just do this for the love of it. We do as much as we can with what we've got. But I think that we use the network, because of course you can probably imagine that with 50 fan groups, you've probably got a lot of different skills within those groups, and actually why not unlock all the ability of those skills to help us reach different things. So we use our network as effectively as we can.
So is that a very deliberate tactic to pool skills resources between people from different groups?
It hasn't been in the past, but it's becoming more so now, because, you know, actually, you know, my personal view as the chair is that, I mean, the chair role is actually relatively unimportant. Actually, what's really important is the representation of the groups, because they are what Pride in Football is. You know, that is Pride in Football, is its groups. It's not its board or its committee or whatever you want to call it. It's the groups. And actually being able to profile those effectively is the most effective way of talking about what we do. So, for example, UK Pride would have been held in Newcastle this weekend, next weekend, I think it is. And the guys that run Newcastle United's Pride reached out to us, said, can you get in touch with everybody through the network to do a happy UK Pride statement from their fan group for UK Pride? So that we sent them all the video clips, they've put it all together, they've edited it, it's going to go out as one video of all the clubs around the country wishing everybody happy UK Pride, which would have taken place in Newcastle.
That's really cool.
So it's about being clever. It's about kind of using, I mean, this shows it, doesn't it? I mean, we never would have got everybody on this call together today in a million years.
Yeah.
This easily, but now we can do it. So let's kind of make the most of this. Let's use it to our advantage.
Well, that's excellent. I'm quite mindful of time, and I'm quite mindful there'll be questions from the virtual floor. So could I invite some of those now? If you want to ask a question, give me a little wave. No questions from the floor? Oh, Rory. I can see Rory.
Hi. Thanks to you all. I mean, I found some of that, all of that really, really interesting. From a kind of a scholarly perspective, there's been quite a lot of research, which is by myself and by Pete and by others, that have shown that there's this kind of shift in attitudes by fans, certainly in England. To Steph, I think in particular, because obviously you're much more focused on or based in England and focused on English football. What's your kind of response to that as an organisation? Because obviously you were formed around the basis that, you know, homophobia was and is a significant issue in the game. Yet, you know, we've got this kind of situation where certain organisations are, you know, engaging and producing these reports telling us that homophobia is an issue, versus some academics who are telling us that actually the issue is far better than we maybe give football fans credit for. What's your kind of take on that as an organisation who are really the heart and soul of LGBT plus fan groups in England?
I think it's mixed, to tell you the truth, Rory. I think that it is fair to say in a number of cases that things are better. I'd like to think they are better, otherwise we've achieved nothing. So hopefully the very existence of our groups has kind of moved the dial forward to some extent, and things are by degree better. But what does better really look like, I suppose, is probably a more important question, isn't it? Because, you know, is it what I found quite interesting, and this is a bit of a tangent, but I think hopefully you'll get where I'm going with this. You know, there were some difficult moments in London the other week with them protests, where there was a number of people descended on the Capitol under the pretense of protecting statues, and there was a lot of disturbances around that. And actually how that was portrayed through the media quite consistently was that these were football fans, and that actually, if that's how football fans are still being portrayed, and you're LGBTQ and you're not sure whether football's a place for you or not, then we've still got a lot of work to do, because that is not going to encourage you to come along and be part of this community. And I felt really annoyed by what I saw there, because I thought that's not the football fans that I know, which talks more to your point, Rory, that things are better. And I think they are, but we can't be blinkered and pretend that they're perfect, because they're really not. And we are still seeing the presence across English football, you know, the sort of, I think the DFLA, which is the Democratic Football Lads Alliance, which I'm sure you're aware of. And, you know, they represent something pretty unpalatable from the point of view of most of us. So, and I don't think that they would see the presence of LGBT fan groups as being a particularly part of the fabric of football that they want to see. So there is still a lot to do, but I would agree that things are better, but I would say there's still a long way to go.
Homophobia takes different forms as well, even within the stadium, doesn't it? I mean, it can take the form of the ignorant comment or the chant. And often it's conferred online these days too. I mean, online is a real. I see lots of homophobia online.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, also a lot of the surveys and stuff are centered around in-stadia experience. but that's not really the whole experience of a match-going football fan. And, you know, to kind of put that into context, you know, one of our group was assaulted last season an hour after the game in a pub, you know, by fellow supporters of our club. So, you know, and he was assaulted because he's gay. There's no doubt about that. That's why that happened. So that would probably never get picked up in any kind of match day reporting, but that's what happened.
I see Stevie's hand up.
Hi there, I'm Stephen. I'm a founder member of Proud Jags, the Parking Thistle supporters group here in Glasgow. We started in 2017 with much support from the club, which was good. Essentially, I think talking about visibility, I suppose one of the things I'd want to ask is, I mean, every club has got its different problems. Some of them are problems across all the different clubs and all the different supporters groups and support as a wider group. But I think each club has got its own issues. Certainly within the our club last year, the club brought out a new strip, which was a season-long away strip, which had an LGBT motif down both sides of the strip. Created a lot of fuss and was good. Created some fuss with some of the usual suspects within our own support who didn't like it, but the club pushed forward with it, and it created a bit of a stir, to the point where people who had never actually been to a football match, two trans friends of mine said, "Oh, I think I might come along. You know, I quite like to come along." And I thought, well, you know, if just having a strip, you know, a rainbow strip down the side of both the away top for the whole season actually causes people to think football is something that is maybe for me, when in the past they haven't even thought that. So that was a big thing. But I think other problems that we see in Glasgow, and I don't want to go into the whole Glasgow divide thing, but sometimes there are bigger problems with football clubs than LGBT issues. And in Glasgow, we have huge problems. I mean, just in the last week or two, I've got a few Rangers friends who have got issues with some of the stuff their own club is doing, and are talking about moving away from their own club, who have been involved with Ibrox Pride. And you know, there's a whole bundle of things which can be looked at as, you know, what are the biggest issues? What are the, you know, is it always the LGBT issue? Yes, that's an issue for me, obviously, in starting Proud Jags. But there's also other issues with regards to, I think somebody alluded to that, you know, obviously there's, you know, in terms of dealing with people who are disabled and access to the ground, and, you know, there's a whole gamut of things, you know, women's football. But I suppose in terms of what I'm trying to say here, it's about, you know, what are the biggest issues, what are the burning issues, how do we best get across being visible within the, I mean, I'm very fortunate being in a club that wants to be visible, that wants to be part of the process, but it's not everybody is. And then what you find is that if they're not in a club where they're getting backing, and I've seen that in a few friends who have tried to start groups up here in Scotland, where it's kind of drifted or fallen away, just because of the fact they've not had the support to do so from their own back, from their own, from their club. And it's about trying to find the interested parties, the people who have a social conscience and want to try and move that forward within the ground and see LGBT issues as being something that needs to be put forward. But I suppose what it is, what do you think are the biggest issues that we should push forward on? What are the, and also, I suppose, as another, there's about 20, 25 of us, there's more than that in terms of the LGBT supporters group, but in terms of actually pushing forward in a smaller club, what would you recommend in terms of actually garnering the talents of those within, in terms of actually, I mean, Proud Jags is part of Pride in Football, as well as having lots of help from Leap Sport Scotland. But I think it's about trying to help those smaller clubs who maybe don't have as many fans, and don't maybe have as many people with as many talents who are able or willing to give of that time and talent. And I think it's, I feel it very much that a lot of it, if I didn't do it, then it wouldn't happen. And I would love other people to come on side with me. And there are people who are slowly beginning to do different things. We were planning to have a drag race night pre-COVID on the 25th of April with the LGBT rugby club here in Glasgow as a fundraiser. And of course that went out the window. And it would have been so good to have raised some funds, raised some money for charity, raised some money for Proud Jags and Glasgow Alphas. But obviously that was, hopefully we'll have that at a later point. But it's about I suppose what I'm trying to get at is what are the biggest issues in terms of visibility, and how do we get more support for those who are trying to actually do it on the ground, those who are trying to build something at their own club, who are maybe feeling that they're not on their own, but sort of if it wasn't driven by them, who else would drive it along?
Thanks, Stevie. I think I saw Andy wanted to answer and Max wanted to answer, and I'm sure there's a point for Steph there about gaining support for those the supporter groups that she might want to address and answer to. So we'll go with Andy first.
Yeah, just one quick point on the visibility and what a club does and how a club shows what it wants to stand for. I think often smaller clubs are a bit more, they don't have the capacity and resources. That's a point I was making beforehand. Also, they might be a bit more afraid to alienate their fan base because they don't have that much of a fan base. I mean, for a club like Borussia Dortmund with I don't know how many million fans worldwide, if there's a homophobic comment on some Twitter account, they can easily say, yeah, you don't ever have to come back to us, we don't care, because it's one of a couple of million. For a smaller club, that might be more problematic. I think for clubs, the most important thing is that they have to be clear about their values. They have to be clear what they want, but they also have to be clear how to defend the strategy they have. Just a quick example that also touches a bit, which we didn't talk about yet much, the role of players. There's a Bundesliga club, a pretty good Bundesliga club with a really good CSR department. They are doing a lot of things right in that regard. Who played with the rainbow armband. So the captain played the whole season with the rainbow armband. They didn't have to do it. It was just a decision by the club. This is what we stand for. This is what we want to do. After the first game, a player, not the captain, another player gave an interview saying, oh, I'm so lucky I'm not the captain because otherwise I would have to wear that rainbow armband, which I won't do. So there's a player completely going against the values the club wants to stand for, and nothing happened. And I'm always thinking, yeah, if you make a decision as a club, you have to stick to that decision, and you have to stick to your values. And if that does mean that you have to let this player go, or to at least do some serious consequences towards that player, I think, yeah, that's a bit of a problem as well, because in the end it means, yeah, we can throw out some fans shouting homophobic abuse, but the player, yeah, he has a contract, he's a good player, he scores goals, we have to keep him.
Thank you, Andy. And Max?
Yeah, about the question what clubs can do and actually be a part of the change. As we work in AIK, we see that a lot of young players that doesn't make it to the first team, ladies or men's teams, actually ends up on the stands. So we have this education system where we actually start from when they're 5 years old, coming into the club. We start teaching them about our values, and from every year that they go on, they have this unique education based from our values and people's right to be who they are, that we actually trying to prepare them for what's coming later on, and to make to create a fan group that are more including and have these thoughts and values when they get up on the stands. And also, like Andy said, that we as a club are really really clear on what we stand for, and that we really take actions when we see stuff, because I think it's really important that clubs actually following their values and really are clear on what they stand for. So, but as what a club can do, I think just teaching the kids, teaching the coaches, teaching the parents about what the club stands for, and really working with these questions within football, because this isn't something we do instead of playing football. If we're able to create an including environment where people feel secure to be who they are, they will perform better on and off the pitch. So I think a really good job to do is actually start teaching them as soon as they put on the first shirt. That's when the teaching starts, how to be a part of the football club, or even better, be a part of the society or of the world, to be a better place. So that's actually what I think that you should do. Start teaching kids, parents, coaches, what the values are and what you want to be and how you want people to look at you. That's like the first thing you should do, if you ask me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Max. And to Stephanie, around the support for people involved in the projects?
Yeah, and much of what Stevie said really resonates with me, because I know what it's like to set these groups up myself, and you're often on your own for quite a long period of time, you know, where you feel like it's just you, and if you don't do it, it's not going to happen. And it does require a bit of stickability to kind of stay with it in the early years. I think is how I would describe that. But do that, and just keep offering people the chance to get involved. You know, I think that's really important. Don't see that as a one-shot thing that you have to do, that you go, oh, you know, I've asked somebody and they said no. I just looked at your Twitter account actually for Proud Jags, and you've got nearly 900 followers. So I would be regularly sort of going out with a tweet saying, if you're interested in getting involved, you know, and actually be clear about what it is you want help with, because people love to volunteer, but they love to know what it is you want them to do. So be really clear about what it is you want them to do. If somebody offers, you know, if that's what you're looking for, if the thing that you need and that's holding you back is this, then define what it is and actually turn that into an opportunity, and sort of go to the club and say, look, we're struggling with this. Have you got any resources internally that can help us with it? Come back to us as a network, Pride in Football, because you know what? There may even be people more broadly in the network who are happy to help you out as well. So I think that just be clear about what it is you want, and don't be afraid to keep asking for it. I would say that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I think from one of the things you said about our friend in Sweden, about the ingraining it in youngsters, we were playing in the cup in November against Pennycook, that fabulous huge club called Pennycook from Edinburgh, and they came onto the pitch. We were the match day sponsors, and the club had asked us to be match day sponsors, choose man of the match, all that kind of stuff. Came onto the pitch with the teams and the banner and the LGBT away strip the team were playing, and our wonderful mascot Kingsley, you've probably seen. And we got on there, and the kids who were actually usually waving Partick Thistle flags from the players' changing rooms were actually all waving pride flags. And it was wonderful to see, because it was such a little thing for the club to actually do, but it actually, you know, sort of gestured the support. All the fans were seeing it, and it just kind of, it was almost, it felt like a very natural thing. A couple of the fans who were there with us from the Proud Jags were actually saying that was actually the biggest moment of the day, not just going on the pitch, getting the pictures taken, choosing man of the match, going to the after presentation with the players. It was actually seeing the kids with the pride flags. It was quite emotional, you know. So I think the other thing I was going to say was to my German friend, in terms of purple shirts. Now that's a Jags talk. That's what I like. Is a nice pink shirt to set it off. And the shirt that we actually had last season, with the logo down it, had the rainbow stripe the whole way down on both sides. So certainly the club is very you know, forward thinking in terms of trying to be visible, trying to do as much as it can for a small club that essentially gets a crowd of 3,000, but takes 2,000 of them to away matches. You know, we're quite a kind of mad lot up here, but I think it's about just trying to be sustain. I think it's not just about the visibility in terms of the group. What concerns me is the sustainability of it. You know, if you've not got a large group of people who are willing to put in the time and the effort, then, you know, and it's about what you were saying about it not being a once-off, you know, asking people and actually saying, you know, can you get involved? Actually trying to, you know, I will go back to people and keep on maybe just saying, you know, does anybody want to, you know, take part? I think that it's really important for me that it's not all about what I'm putting into it. It should be about trying to engage with as many people with as many talents. I think that's probably my biggest concern there, Steph.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm quite conscious that I said we'd last 50 minutes and we've gone a bit over that. So I just want to say thank you to each of the panelists and everyone in the audience too. But I wonder if each of the panelists could just end by telling us where we'd find out just a little bit more about your organisation or your work. So if we go with Max first of all.
Yeah, obviously you go to aikfootball.se. I'm really ashamed that I don't know this, but I think we got an English person. Oh, otherwise, let me know. But that's like the best way, or even it's the best way. Send me an email at max.bergander@aikfootball.se. I can send it to the group and ask me the questions. I will make sure that you get the answers you need and want.
Perfect. Thank you, Max. And over to Stephanie.
Yeah, you can find us at our website's www.prideinfootball.co.uk, and you can find us on Twitter at prideinfootball.
Brilliant. Thank you, Steph. And to Andy.
Yeah, obviously we're on social media as well as Fans Europe with FSE and FFPH as Football Fans Against Homophobia. And also you can find our Erasmus Plus project on bringing experts together against homophobia on the out@football.org.
Brilliant. And how much longer have we got on that project?
Until the end of the year. It was launched a bit through the actual situation at the moment. But we will be having our last event in October together with the Belgian Football Association in Brussels.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And with that, I just want to say a final thank you to everybody. Thank you very much for joining us.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.